And let's actually just talk briefly about Uranus actually on its own, and then we'll talk about Gemini. So I had previously mentioned this I think it was in the last Oracle talks. Um, a little bit about Uranus, but I want to go a bit deeper, just a bit deeper with this. So Uranus archetypally is very much has similar qualities to what we associate with Saturn and with Jupiter combined, but then also magnified exponentially, because there's also that component of very much those things that are outside of our control. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all basically the trans Neptunian objects in our solar system are uh, archetypally associated with the divine itself, the Godhead itself, if you will. So very much those things that are tapping into that which is beyond our understanding and also our ability to um, control. Like there is that additional element of the great mystery, or of luck, or what have you, that is playing out there. Okay, so starting with Uranus, very much so, but for me anyway, as I tap into the energy of that planet, again, it has those qualities of Saturn and Jupiter in terms of what we associate with it archetypally. We're just speaking archetypes here, and and also that element of the surprise and things outside of our control. In terms of tarot, for those of you who are comfortable with that, it also is associated with the Tower card. So it is divine intervention. So that divine intervention can be literal inspiration, it can be catalyzation for something new, it can be the sudden breaking down of something that actually has been a hindrance to allow for liberation. Um, while the breaking down of the thing may be a surprise, um, in terms of surprise that it's happened, the subject matter or what actually is being kind of broken down is known. And it has, again, been something that is long standing. So we're going to keep that as a backdrop. Another thing that I mentioned with Uranus in that last video was about how you could also think of it as high risk, high reward. And I'll add another piece of this too, because I don't think I said this before, but also high losses. So yeah, high risk, high reward, high losses. So again, that combination of what we associate with Saturn and Jupiter, putting in your hard work and luck being opportunity meeting preparation kind of thing. High rewards for work that is being put in after a period of time, but also strong risk for what seems to be high losses. And I say what seems to be because one of the things that you will notice when you look at just the energy of Uranus on its own, because to be clear, none of these planets and none of our experiences with these archetypes are happening in isolation. They are very much relational, but we're honing in specifically on this as much as possible on its own. But one of the things that you will notice with this energy is that when we get to the tail end of its transit through a sign, um, whether it's literally the second half or maybe the last maybe 2 to 3 years of the transit, is when you see either a slow decline or the beginning of losses, quote unquote, starting to happen, or a sharp period of loss or stripping away of what has been. Okay. So, if we look at when Uranus was just in Aries, okay, which was 2011 to 2018, you may notice during that period of time in your life where maybe the beginning couple years of that stage, it was just like a little bit more wide-eyed, open, looking to explore more, take more risks, right? And having a good thing going and starting to have some high rewards. And then towards the tail end of that transit, 2016, 2017, 2018, depending, um, some losses, some high losses, not just little losses, it's high risk, high loss. So some high losses happening around that time. Okay. With Uranus and Taurus, 2018 through, up to this first part of 2026. The beginning part of those years, again, taking the high risk and beginning to have some higher rewards during the first part of that transit, maybe the first 4 to 5 years, and then on the tail end, 6, 7, and 8, these last 2 to 3 years of this transit might have been seeing, excuse me, more high losses in comparison to the high rewards that you're getting previously. So moving forward then for this Uranus and Gemini transit, which is 2026 through the spring 2026 to spring of 2033, we can expect similar situations. So, starting to be more open to experimenting more, taking a little bit more risks, starting to have some high rewards as we get into year 3, 4, and 5 of the transit. And then on the tail end of the transit, then starting to see, what's going to seem as the high losses. Okay. So I say that to say, if we know that this is how things can play out, then we have an opportunity to actually look a little closer at what these so-called losses are. Okay, what's actually being stripped, what's actually being removed. Because the thing is, since, as I mentioned earlier, archetypally with Uranus is going to be more related to divine intervention, the things that are being stripped in such a way that we're asking and doing some deep reflection around some core questions, which would usually be like, okay, why am I really here doing this? What actually is really important? What am I committed to, regardless of circumstances? What actually is there to survive the highs and the lows? What has within it an everlasting spirit that remains regardless of changing circumstances? And it's like, going through the fire and coming out as the phoenix, but also looking and sifting through the ashes to be like, okay, what actually did not burn? Because some stuff, yes, had to be transformed and transmuted, but some stuff was not ever even touched by the flame. Some of the things that went through the fire wasn't even touched by the flame. So what are those things? So you can, again, do that introspection, do that reflection for that Uranus and Aries transit, like I mentioned, 2011, 20 to 2018, that journey, but in particular those last couple of years, 2018 to 2026 for Uranus and Gemini, that journey and the themes associated with, Taurus in this regards to resources, what was going on there and the things that you were questioning and what was being brought up towards the end of that cycle as those losses started to come through. Because that's going to be the same thing here with Uranus and Gemini. We're going to be asking those same questions of, okay, what is actually here that is not touched by the fire? What is a non-negotiable? What is the commitment regardless of circumstance? Not because I say so or my ego, but it's just like, no, fundamentally, this is what it is, and it's something that I can't help but keep coming back to because it is something that at a soul level is actually good for me, is actually beneficial to me as well as the community. Right? So we get to discuss that. So that's the influence. It's not necessarily a fun one, but again, if we know that that's what is there, we can then keep that in mind in the times of the high reward part of the journey and potentially, it's a long time, so it's hard to kind of keep this stuff in mind, but potentially buffer the effects of um, and the effects meaning like the experience, because if something's going to be stripped, it's going to be stripped. But kind of buffer the effects of the experience of that stripping in the latter part of the cycle, and the fire that will be coming through to transmute, clear, but also reveal that which is everlasting. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, put in the comments. I'll address it. But I think we're on the same wavelength there. So Gemini, as I mentioned before, archetypally is deals with a couple of things, but communication, the markets, technology, as well as social circles and closer relationships. So that kind of miniature world that we have for ourselves. So it's not the necessarily bigger world, but it's our social circles. It's the energy that we are around on a regular basis. So, you know, you might be around your siblings on a regular basis, your friends on a regular basis, your local neighborhood, your coworkers. That's part of that Gemini energy. Your digital or mental or consumption, media consumption world is also part of that. So that is all those things that most directly and consistently show up in your kind of mini world, if that makes sense.